after the planning session, this is where a lot of groups struggle and fail, is they don't have an implementation plan. So part one is the strategic plan. Part two is the implementation plan. How are you actually going to get this done? Some call it deployment, some call execution. I'll call it implementation, right? So you've set the policy, now you've got to implement the policy. So how do you do that? Here's how. The first thing you need to do is you need to make a decision. Who is going to do what by when? Who is going to do what by when? So here's something that I find useful, and this is what we did with Shwuckum this afternoon, is once we nailed down those, and I think we came up with 6, which was perfect, 6 awesome, compelling goals, we then decided to assign a goal champion or a goal ambassador, someone that's responsible for taking that goal forward to the next step. So the next step is around exploring the feasibility. That doesn't happen at the planning session, that happens in terms of the implementation phase. So they're now tasked with the feasibility study. How does this work? What do we need to do? What resources are required, etc. So that happens afterwards. So each board member, as it turned out, was then tasked with being a champion of one of the goals that they hold most dear, that they could really, really commit to. So then after doing that, the next step is for each of those champions to then strike a task force. Now a task force is kind of like a committee, but it's not a standing committee. It's a task force that has a specific task. The task is to review and make recommendations on a specific policy, and then report their recommendations to the board for a decision as to what to do next. So that's the job of a task force. It's task-oriented, and it has a limited time horizon. Unlike normal standing committees like membership committee, finance committee, program committee, all of these committees are what we call standing committees that are always there, there's always something going on. These, though, task forces, are there for a specific need or a specific purpose or a specific project, and therefore have and should have a time horizon, a sunset clause. So in this case, what we did with this group here today was each of these task forces are struck today and will be ended in 4 months. And that was enough time that we felt that the board needed to do their due diligence and some further research on each of those strategic goals. 4 months because they meet bi-monthly, so they'll have 2 board meetings in which to report and speak and share and discuss before they report their findings. So be sure that you set up task forces, have a task force chair, and then finally come up with the terms of reference for each of those task forces. The final piece of advice that I would give you around setting up a task force or a committee is to set up a task force or committee comprised of members. One of the biggest mistakes that boards make is they feel like the directors have to do all the work themselves. Well, that's just a recipe for burnout. That doesn't work, and it's not sustainable. So if you want something sustainable with leverage, you need to get more people on your team. So what that means is your job as the chair is not to do all the work. Your job as chair is to recruit committee members or task force members. Engage them, get them involved, get them feeling empowered, and invite them to join your team and assist you in doing some of the hard work.